So whoever this imposed threat is, let's say a parent, when you also rely on that person to clothe you and to direct you and to guide you and to feed your belly and all of those things, what can happen there inside in a child's mind? This is really sad. And it also, of course, that makes me think about our children. So I'm not going to stay on this for very long, but what can happen is the lines or the understanding of love and perceived threat and danger get crossed and confused. If this happened with you where there was some sort of abuse, perceived threat, I want to keep saying perceived threat because so many of us out there, me included, I didn't consider what happened to me as abuse. No, I wasn't abused. But if you were ever in a position where you felt threatened or not sure of whether you were in good standing with a parent, with a brother, sister, whatever, if you felt like you were walking on eggshells, the chances are that this might have affected the way that you showed up in relationships going forward. Let's say it's verbal abuse, just for this example. The threat comes on, your parent is berating you and belittling you and what's wrong with you and blah, blah, blah. If you're scared of that person, because you also really crave their love and affection, you have to figure out how to turn that person from that yelling phase or physical phase or whatever it is. You have to figure out how you can get back into where they're loving you again, because they are your source for all of it. This is the only way that you received love and safety, security. So then it would make sense that you would go into your relationships going forward in teenage and whatever years. It's not just like the relationship that you saw between mom and dad, right? Although that could very well play a part in it, but also the relationships that you had as a child. Maybe it was a brother or sister or a cousin or something. When you see everybody else treating them as they are respected and to be respected, you question your own perception of what danger is, of what's good for you, what's not good for you, right? Because you see everybody else acting normally to them. So you're like, well, maybe this is normal. Maybe it's me. Then when you go into high school and whatever, you associate, because your earliest associations were threat and love from the same source, then all of the following ones, even if the relationships look different from the outside, you're going towards that familiarity of the threat and the love coming from the same source. Maybe it wasn't threat, maybe it was fear. If somebody did a lot of insulting to you when you were young, you could never do anything right. Well, that's what you're going to look for, and you're going to associate with love moving forward in all your relationships. You don't realize that you're doing this, but if you are so used to feeling not secure, not safe, not tended to as a child, then choosing that and thinking that is normal in adulthood, even if done on a more subdued level, the chances are very high that you're going to do that. And that's why, for me, I chose Bad Boys, because that to me was very familiar. And the people that functioned well and normally, quote unquote, normally in relationships, those people seemed really weird. You ever, I can picture back in the day, as a teenager, 16 years old or whatever, being in a car with a guy that I could have dated, right? And great looking, captain of the football team sort of guy. He came from a very functional family. And to me, it felt very awkward. I felt like we were missing on all levels. Like I couldn't land anything. There was no comfortability. And so then I would always veer right back to the Bad Boys. And that to me, I was like, oh, this is like an old glove. This is comfortable, What do they say? Neurons that fire together, wire together. So basically, if you experience the love and the threat as a child, those two responses and emotions in your head became wired, put together. And so now anytime that you feel love, you expect threat to be not far after. Maybe in school, you didn't ever even consider trying hard. Maybe you took school as kind of la-di-da, whatever, what's really the point here? It was not even really a consideration in your mind that you needed to do well. This is how I was anyway. I went through school kind of like the class clown. I'd skip class. I didn't really consider consequences. I now know it's because of the earliest trauma and then subsequent. Quickly, to give context, my brother was 4.5, 5 years older than me. He was my mom's son and not my dad's son. And he abused me one time that I can remember sexually. So I'm going to leave it at that. But I will say that there was a marked change in the way that I viewed myself moving forward. If I look back at pictures, it's a very clear distinction between little girl and angry kid, tomboy. I cut all of my hair off, and I remember saying to my mom, "Mom, I need to cut my hair." "Oh, did you want a bob or whatever?" "No, I want it just like a boy. I want my hair just like a boy." That's what I did. I stood to the side in all the pictures on my, like Girl Scouts and brownies and whatever else. You always saw me like over on the side with kind of an angry face. And like many children, I didn't remember it. I blocked it out, I believe, from right after it happened. I did not ever speak about it. I did not talk about it or anything until it finally came up for me pretty early. Many kids, if they're sexually abused young by somebody in their family, they don't remember it until well into adulthood, if they ever do. It's amazing what the body does for us, the central nervous system. It protects us and locks up, doesn't provide access to memories from that time period, not just that event, but a lot of times we will block out years, chunks of time. And so what happens is it stunts the brain's ability to mentally time travel, whether that's going backward, recalling old events, or forward, which I'm going to visit in a minute. Okay, so that explains why I didn't give a shit about school. And it wasn't in a bad attitude way. I was just like, okay. I didn't have goals, aspirations. I didn't have the ability to picture my life past the current day that I was living ever. And so I'm going to just step out on a limb and assume that there are others of you listening that have experienced something similar to one degree or another. If you do have any sort of trauma from your childhood. That experience of my brother doing what he did back then affected so much of the way I showed up in the world afterwards. And so, yeah, I still do have some anger about that. But I also trust that and know that, as I've said to you guys before, that suffering has happened and will continue to happen for as long as there are people on this earth. So who am I to feel entitled to be the one that doesn't suffer? We all suffer in our own ways. It's what we do with it. And I know that if I can help even just one of you through whatever you might be suffering with, not just with alienation, but with sharing this today, then it's worth it. So anyway, the abuse as a child and then subsequent things that happened, other traumas that happened along the way, of course, affected the way that I showed up. And because I was not conscious, like I started in survival mode from the second that happened and sort of operated on that moving forward in my life, I didn't possess the ability to forward plan. I think about that all the time now. Like, oh, wow, there were so many things, so many areas of my life that I didn't explore. Today I am. But only after realizing that it wasn't me that was broken or something was wrong with me. I thought that the reason I couldn't, when I was in the shower thinking about looking back to my past, why can't I keep money in my bank account? Why can't I learn from these relationships and start picking and being attracted to better people back when I was having the struggles with drinking, with my habits? Why can't I just learn from my mistakes? This is another one of the side effects of carrying unresolved childhood trauma, is not being able to learn from the mistakes in order to change the habits, change your patterns, and start making choices that actually benefit you. Because of the feeling of familiarity that these quote unquote bad choices provide for you. The only limitations that are ever on you are the ones that you create in your brain. Where there's a will, there's a way. Trauma does not have to hold you back at all any longer. You can still be in active grief, which you will be concerning your child. You will absolutely continue to go through your highs and lows and ins and outs of grief, and also still make decisions and advocate for yourself in the best possible way, in the most up-leveled way possible for you today. You know what I'm saying? Don't allow your grief and the trauma that you've experienced to hold you back, but instead have it propel you forward. All right?